Hey, everybody, welcome to this interview with Nathaniel Jordon. I'm excited to have you on this Prog chat. How would you describe the genre of shoegaze to somebody who's new? Because I'm really hoping that some of my watchers of my channel who aren't familiar with shoegaze are going to watch this.
I think with shoegaze, they push the limit of the guitar in many different ways. Sometimes it's difficult to hear. It's so blurry, and I think it's a genre which oftentimes prioritizes. It can prioritize texture and like wavy sounds created over a specific song structure or something like that. Sometimes even the vocals could sound like a guitar. So basically, you have like the guitars and bass and vocals. They're all blurred together, and you create a heavy, intense sound.
I've been really getting into shoegaze lately, and it's really bizarre that I've been aware of the term shoegaze, and I've been a music fan for decades, and I can't understand how I managed to miss it. Just in this last few months, one of my subscribers requested me to react to Lush, and it was Super Blast, I think is the name of the song. And that just started me on this rabbit hole, as they say. Your channel turned up on my YouTube feed, and I subscribed right away. And you have lots of sort of documentaries that you sort of made about different key shoegaze bands. And I guess this is more or less in the late 80s, early 90s, really. Isn't that when it kind of happened in the UK?
There was the Isn't Anything album in 1988, kind of started around that area and kind of remained popular into the early 90s. I think around the time Souvlaki came out by Slowdive, you were starting to see a backlash because I think partially because the Britpop scene was coming out, and I think the press kind of lost interest at that time. Like, I know with Slowdive, I think it had an impact on them. They released a third album in the mid 90s, and they kind of shifted more towards an ambient techno sound. And you would see a bunch of these groups who started out in the late 80s, early 90s, kind of try to adjust their sound a bit. So I do think the press did play a big part in that. Luckily, now with the internet and all that, I don't think the press could play as big of a role if that were to happen again nowadays. But what's great to see now is, like, in the past roughly 10 years or so, it seems like the scene's starting to be re-examined, and kind of picking up where it left off. So that's been really exciting to see.
Why is it that the UK is such a hotbed of something so unique like shoegaze? And for example, even prog rock originated basically in the UK as well. It came out in the late 60s, early 70s. King Crimson was one of the godfathers of prog. But then again, you got grunge. That kind of came out of Seattle, which is actually not too far from where I am here now. Do you like grunge too? Like, I love grunge. How do you like grunge?
I love grunge as well. It's kind of what I was into throughout high school. I still listen to it nowadays, but yeah, definitely love Nirvana, Alice in Chains, all that stuff.
Kurt Cobain, when people talk about all these great rock stars who died young, Kurt Cobain is at the top of my list, actually, as far as music and culture lost the most. He has a wide influence too. I hear prog metal bands where I hear influences of his songwriting style come out a little bit.
Yeah, I never thought about that before, but I think you make a good point, because yeah, what Nirvana released 3 albums, yeah, and then that was all. It
Yeah.
is just horrible. It really
Mm-hmm.
is.
Yeah.
Just 27. I'm 24, so I'm almost the age he was when he passed. So it's just,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, he had a whole lifetime.
Do you think there's a relationship between grunge and shoegaze?
I think a little bit because I think both of them kind of took inspiration from maybe Sonic Youth a little bit or Dinosaur Jr. especially. So I think both of them have, they do have separate roots, but I do think there is a bit of an overlap there because I think with both scenes, they roughly reemerged or emerged around the same time, like 1988, 89, and both kind of disappeared around the same time too.
Earlier this year was watching Stranger Things. They also played some Siouxsie and the Banshees when the credits were rolling up at the end of the season. I remember listening to the song and saying, oh, that's really cool. And I looked it up. And then I see this connection to The Cure and then Siouxsie and the Banshees. And now suddenly I'm getting into shoegaze. How are all those acts somehow connected? Because they sure seem like they're connected to me.
I think they are because I think a lot of the early shoegaze acts kind of had this gothier sound. And another one I'd throw in there too, maybe, is the Cocteau Twins, because I think they probably played a major role in connecting like The Cure and Siouxsie and the Banshees over into like shoegaze acts Because when you like listen through their discography, you hear like in their first album, Garlands, it has a very heavily inspired Siouxsie and the Banshees Curie sort of sound. But as they progress, their sound becomes almost more pristine in a way, like very lush, just beautiful. And I think it becomes dreamier, and they use the word ethereal to describe it. And I think a lot of the shoegaze acts took inspiration from the Cocteau Twins. I don't think Kevin Shields did, but I think most others did. And so I think you can see a lot of it there. But yeah, a lot of those acts also took inspiration from Siouxsie and the Banshees and the Cure as well. I recently talked to a Christian Saville from Slowdive, and he was telling me that those two were both major influences for initially for their second album, but they kind of went in a different direction ultimately.
There's something about Japan that has a unique angle on things. What's your experience with Japanese shoegaze?
Yeah, there is an amazing Japanese shoegaze scene, and it kind of emerged in the late 1990s and kind of has continued ever since. I think there's a lot of great Japanese shoegaze groups out there right now. Like, My Dead Girlfriend's a big one, or Luminous Orange. They were kind of bigger in the earlier 2000s, but a lot of the music scenes there, I think they have a love for noise because, you see math rock groups there as well. So Trico, that's a big one. And you see a lot of noise rock groups coming out of there as well. So
it's interesting to see all the different, like, for example, France has sort of its own scene. There is actually a Blackgaze band, Alceste or Alceste. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Maybe you've heard of them.
Oh, Alceste. Sure, yeah. I need to dive more into that particular scene. I've actually, I'm hoping to do a video on it at some point in the future, but I'll have to definitely dive more into it because it definitely is there, and I know it has its own fan base. Really, I know there's a lot of people out there who were brought into shoegaze through kind of the Blackgaze scene. They may have initially been metal fans or post-rock fans, and then they kind of got introduced to shoegaze through groups like Alceste. And that's another factor about shoegaze music I appreciate is there's a lot of great groups out there that'll blend it with like electronic music or post-rock or ambient music. So it's great to see it take a whole variety of different forms.
I mean, these labels are kind of loose, right? The idea of pop, what's it called again? Pop? No, there's Dream Pop. Yeah. So yeah. How is that different than shoegaze? Do you think there's something definable about it?
It's kind of hard where that line's drawn, but I think with shoegaze, generally speaking, there's more of an emphasis on noise. While with Dream Pop, it's more of a like kind of, you get kind of more Cocteau-y, maybe the Fishmans, a group from a Japanese group. Again, I hope I'm saying that right. You get more of like a kind of a pristine sound to it. While with shoegaze, you can get into a very heavy, more layered sound oftentimes too. But I think generally speaking, that line is difficult to draw. I know like with Cocteau Twins in particular, there's some people who say they're shoegaze, while I would personally file them more in a dream pop category. But yeah, I think there is a distinction. It's just kind of hard to know where exactly you draw that line.
How do you think the health is right now for shoegaze? Because you mentioned in the last decade, people were rediscovering shoegaze and that there was a resurgence.
That's a good question. I'm hoping it'll expand again because, you see every year, it seems like there's more and more shoegaze groups releasing music. Because like not only are you seeing groups from the 90s reuniting, like Slowdive's a big one. My Bloody Valentine will release a fourth album maybe sometime this century. They say they're going too soon. They take forever, but that's okay. It takes time to write something good. Even like the Drop 19s are reuniting just last year, actually, and they're working on a third album. So you're seeing a lot of these original shoegaze groups reunite. And on top of that, you're also seeing some modern groups also kind of lean into a shoegazier sound. Like the new Always record. I'd like to see it continue to grow because, I love the sound, but, you never know. It could be fashionable for a few years and disappear again, but hopefully not.
There was a similar thing that happened with prog rock as with shoegaze, whereas shoegaze got displaced by britpop, it seemed. Whereas with prog rock, punk in the late 70s, they say that displaced prog. So prog became very unfashionable. Everyone was into punk and the Sex Pistols and stuff like that. And then in the 90s, it started to slowly, gradually germinate and spread. There was a little band called Dream Theater, and they kind of became the flag bearers of prog. And then, of course, more and more. Marillion was another one. And it's just been continuous. I'm hopeful that prog and shoegaze are both going to continue to flourish.
I'm actually kind of interested just in the whole prog scene because, I'll definitely have to check out your channel more, because I've always enjoyed prog music. I'm not that familiar with it. I know I learned a lot of the classic prog bands through my dad. I don't know if you'd
Mhm.
consider Rush progressive rock
Oh
really. Maybe
yes, yeah,
you
yeah.
would.
They're
Okay, cool. Yeah,
yeah,
or Yes. I like
yep.
Yes. I
Mhm.
like their Closer to the Edge album. Is that what it's
Mhm.
called? Am I getting that
Cl-
right?
Close, as close to the edge. Yeah,
Close to the Edge. Oh crap.
yeah,
But that's a
yeah.
good one. So I've enjoyed Dream Theater as well. But yeah, I'll definitely have to dive more into that scene.
Yeah, so how is your channel going? I really love your channel, I gotta say. And I want to
Thank you.
encourage everyone watching this, make sure you go subscribe to Stained Glass Stories. That's
Thank you. Thank you
Nathaniel's.
very much.
Yeah,
That's very
it's
nice of you. And yeah, if anybody from my channel happens to come across this, make sure to subscribe to the Prog Dog.
so have you seen any shoegaze bands live?
No, I did. I went to a Built to Spill concert once a few years ago up in Minneapolis, and there was this opening act from Brazil, and they kind of had a shoegazy sound. I can't remember what they were called though, and I really wish I did because they were awesome. One of the best, probably the best opening act I ever saw. I know Ride is coming to Minneapolis pretty soon, so hopefully I'll get to see them. What about you? Have you seen any prog acts live?
I've seen Rush a few times. I've seen Yes, but yeah, I would love to see some shoegaze acts if they come through.
I mean, do you have any prog albums to recommend someone like me who's just kind of getting into the
But
scene?
yeah, I guess you mentioned Close to the Edge. You know that one, eh? That album, Close to the Edge. Fragile. That's a by Yes. That's another Yes one if you want to focus more on Yes. And Rush, Moving Pictures,
Yeah.
and King Crimson also had some really amazing albums. One's called Discipline. I'd recommend that one. Thank you so much, Nathaniel. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and my watchers of the channel here. Hopefully, some prog fans are going to want to check out some shoegaze. What would you suggest for them to check out?
Well, the holy trifecta in shoegaze: Loveless by My Bloody Valentine, Souvlaki by Slowdive, and Nowhere by Ride. Those are kind of the big three. But I also like In the Comforts of Madness by Pale Saints. I think that's the name of it. That's a great record as well. And that one kind of experiments with different time structures. So I think that one might appeal to maybe a little bit to prog fans. Maybe I don't know,
Perfect.
but
Perfect.
yeah,
That's perfect. And actually, I'm going to do full album reacts to probably all of that you mentioned. I've already done Loveless, and
yeah.
that's getting some good hits on it. How do you like being a YouTuber?
I like it. I've been doing it for a while now. I had an old channel that was just crappy top 10 channel that I did in my teen years. So I did that for a while. So I was very interested in like Billboard Hot 100 songs. But over time, maybe around the time I turned 18, 19, I became more interested in just searching for new different styles and sounds. And that's kind of how I got into shoegaze. So that's why I created the new channel. And I've been very happy with how it's been going. I started just a little over a year ago, and I had no idea how many people out there would be interested. And I wasn't sure if it was just such a small scene, but I've seen over time there's actually quite an audience for it. So it's been great to see.
So thanks again. I'm going to have to
Yeah.
say goodbye because Zoom only gives me 40 minutes. Talk to you later.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Great talking to you.